Welcome to the Revenge Story Times channel. How many strangers need to see you in your underwear before you feel validated? The words came out before I could stop them. Evelyn jumped, nearly dropping her phone. Frank, I thought you were at work. She scrambled to wrap herself in a robe, as if modesty suddenly mattered. Hey there, this is Evelyn. You know that feeling when everything in your life finally seems to click into place? That's exactly how I felt when I met Frank after a string of relationships that went nowhere. He was like a breath of fresh air. You deserve better than this, Evelyn, my mom used to tell me every time another relationship crashed and burned. She wasn't wrong. I had this habit, I guess you could call it, of dating guys who needed fixing. There was Jake, who couldn't keep a job for more than 3 months because his boss was always out to get him. Then came Marcus, who had big dreams but spent most of his time playing video games in his parents' basement. Oh, and let's not forget Chris, who needed to find himself, apparently by dating other girls while still with me. I kept thinking I could help them, like maybe if I just supported them enough, showed them enough patience, they'd eventually become the person I knew they could be. Spoiler alert, they never did. You can't change people who don't want to change, my best friend Lisa told me over coffee one day after Chris and I broke up. You need to stop being everyone's personal rehabilitation center. Then I met Frank. It was at a coffee shop, cliché, I know, but sometimes life really does play out like a romantic comedy. He accidentally grabbed my oat milk latte instead of his Americano, and when he realized the mistake, he was so apologetic it was actually adorable. We got talking, and before I knew it, an hour had passed. Frank was different. He had his life together in a way none of my exes ever did. He owned his own place, had a stable job as a software engineer, and actually made plans for the future, not just vague someday plans, but real ones with timelines and goals. I've never dated anyone so grown up before. I remember telling my sister on the phone after our third date. Maybe because you've finally grown up yourself, she replied, and I couldn't even be mad because she was probably right. The first year with Frank was amazing. He remembered important dates, made time for me even when work was crazy, and actually listened when I talked about my day. He didn't just nod along while scrolling through his phone, he asked questions, remembered details, cared about what I was saying. He's definitely a keeper, my mom said when she met him at Christmas. Coming from her, that was like winning a Nobel Prize. She'd never liked any of my boyfriends before. But lately, I don't know, something feels off. Frank's been distant, especially these past few months. He says it's just stress from work, they're launching some big projects, but it feels like more than that. He's been making these little comments about my friends, especially Emma and Carol. Nothing outright negative, just these subtle hints of disapproval. Didn't Carol just get engaged? He asked last week after I got back from girls' night. Maybe she should spend more time with her fiancé instead of clubbing every weekend. I brushed it off at the time, but it's been playing on my mind. Sure, my friends can be a bit wild sometimes, but they're good people. They've been there for me through all my bad relationships, all my ups and downs. Still, when I look at Frank, I see the future I've always wanted. He's stable, kind, responsible, everything I thought I'd never find. So why does it feel like we're slowly drifting apart? Why does his silence sometimes feel heavier than words? I keep telling myself it's just a phase, that every relationship has its rough patches, but there's this nagging feeling in my gut that something bigger is brewing. I just wish I knew what it was. Hey, it's Frank. Looking back, I should have spoken up sooner. That's what keeps me awake at night, all those moments I chose to stay quiet, thinking I was being understanding when I should have said something. But how do you tell someone that their closest friends are slowly poisoning your relationship? I remember the first time I met Emma and Carol at a dinner party Evelyn hosted. On the surface, everything seemed fine, they were friendly enough, laughing at my jokes, asking about my work. But there was something off about the way they exchanged glances when Evelyn talked about our future together. Oh honey, you're not actually planning to settle down yet, are you? Emma had said, wine glass dangling between her fingers. I might have dismissed it as a throwaway comment if I hadn't overheard Emma in the kitchen later that night, bragging about how she'd been cheating on her boyfriend Tom with some guy from her gym. The worst part? Carol was giving her high fives like it was some kind of achievement. "Don't be such a prude," I heard Carol say when another friend expressed concern. "Tom's boring anyway. Emma deserves to have some fun." The more time I spent around them, the more I noticed the pattern. Carol, despite being engaged to Mike, a decent guy who clearly adored her, would openly flirt with other men at bars. I once saw her give her number to a bartender while Mike was in the bathroom. When she caught me watching, she just winked and said, "What happens in girls' night stays in girls' night." "They're just being silly," Evelyn would say whenever I tried to bring it up. That's just how they joke around. But it wasn't just joking. They were systematically undermining every serious relationship in their circle. When our friend Rachel got married, they spent the entire reception making bets on how long it would last. "Marriage is basically a relationship funeral," Emma had declared, loud enough for several guests to hear. The worst part was watching how they manipulated Evelyn. Every time she talked about our future together, they'd roll their eyes or make these little comments: "God, you sound like my mom," or "Since when did you become so boring?" I started noticing changes in Evelyn. She'd come home from their girls' nights different, more distant, questioning everything about our relationship. Normal couple things, like staying in for a movie night, suddenly became too domestic, according to her. "Frank's turning you into an old lady," I overheard Carol say one night. "You used to be fun before he came along." That's the thing about toxic influence, it's subtle. It's not like they were telling Evelyn to break up with me outright. Instead, they kept planting these seeds of doubt, making her question whether being in a stable relationship meant she was missing out on life. "He's kind of controlling, isn't he?" Emma would say if I expressed any concern about their late-night partying. "A real man would trust you completely." Trust. They'd weaponize the word against me. Apparently, trusting your girlfriend meant being okay with everything her friends did, no matter how destructive. I watched them normalize cheating, lying, and manipulation, all under the guise of living your best life and not being tied down. The hardest part? Seeing Evelyn slowly start to believe them. The woman I fell in love with, the one who valued honesty and commitment, was being replaced by someone who seemed increasingly unsure about what she wanted, and I felt powerless to stop it without coming across as the controlling boyfriend they'd already labeled me to be. I kept telling myself to be patient, that Evelyn would see through their toxic behavior eventually. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder if I'm fighting a losing battle against an influence that's been in her life far longer than I have. I never thought I'd be sitting in my bathroom at 2 a.m., taking selfies in lingerie, but here I was, trying to find the perfect angle, the perfect pose, all because Emma and Carol convinced me it was time to build my brand. It started during our weekly wine night. We were sprawled across Emma's living room, halfway through our second bottle of rose, when Carol pulled up her TikTok analytics. "Look at these numbers," she thrust her phone in my face, showing off her latest video, a dance routine in a crop top and shorts. 5,000 likes in 2 hours. That's what I call validation. Emma leaned over my shoulder, her wine sloshing dangerously close to my white blouse. "God, Evelyn, you'd kill it on TikTok. You've got that whole innocent but sexy librarian thing going on." I laughed it off at first. Frank would have a heart attack. Frank, Emma rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. "When did you start letting a man dictate what you can and can't post?" "It's not like that," I protested, but my voice sounded weak even to me. "I just don't think it's appropriate when you're in a serious relationship." Carol paused her scrolling. "Honey, my follower count doubled after I got engaged. Men love what they can't have. Besides," she took a long sip of wine, "Mike doesn't own me. Neither does Frank own you." The word own hit something inside me. Had I been letting Frank control me without realizing it? "Remember that girl from our yoga class?" Emma chimed in. "The one who started posting workout videos? She just got sponsored by that activewear brand. Imagine getting paid to just exist online." They made it sound so simple, so empowering. Just a few photos, a couple of videos. Nothing explicit, they assured me, just enough to get attention, to feel seen. But Frank, stop, Carol cut me off every time we suggest something fun, you bring up Frank. The old Evelyn would never let a guy clip her wings like this. He's not clipping my wings, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I felt uncertain. Was I becoming too dependent on Frank's approval? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what they'd said. I scrolled through Carol and Emma's profiles, saw the hundreds of comments, the likes, the followers. They seemed so confident, so free. The next morning, Emma sent me a message. Just try one post. If you hate it, delete it. What's the worst that could happen? So I tried, just one photo at first. Nothing too revealing, just a gym selfie in my new workout set. The likes started rolling in, then the followers. Each notification felt like a tiny shot of adrenaline. See? Carol texted when I showed them. Now imagine if you really went for it. They started sending me inspiration, poses to try, outfits to wear, captions to use. Each suggestion pushed the boundary a little further. Men love the illusion of availability, Emma explained during one of our planning sessions. You don't have to be single to be desirable. Frank noticed, of course. I saw the way his jaw tightened when he caught me taking photos, the way he purposely looked away from my phone when I was editing. But he didn't say anything, not at first. And I convinced myself that meant he was okay with it. He's just old-fashioned, Emma would say whenever I mentioned his obvious discomfort. Men like him need to learn that women aren't their property. I kept telling myself this was about empowerment, about taking control of my own image. But late at night, when the likes and comments slowed down, I'd catch myself staring at older photos of Frank and me. Pictures from when things were simpler, when validation came from the warmth in his eyes rather than the fire emoji from strangers. But I couldn't stop. The attention was intoxicating, and my friends were right there, cheering me on, pushing me to post more, be more daring, care less about what Frank thought. It felt like standing on the edge of something exciting and dangerous, and I wasn't sure if I was about to fly or fall. The notification popped up on my phone during a client meeting. Evelyn posted for the first time in a while. I tried to ignore it, but my thumb had already clicked the alert. There she was, my girlfriend of nearly 2 years, posed on our bed in black lingerie, with a caption about feeling herself. I excused myself from the meeting, claiming a family emergency. My hands were shaking as I drove home. This wasn't the first provocative post, they've been getting progressively more revealing over the past few months. But something about seeing our bedroom, our private space, displayed for thousands of strangers, made my stomach turn. When I walked in, Evelyn was still in our room, taking more photos, music playing, and I could hear Emma's voice coaching her through the speaker. Try arching your back more, men go crazy for that pose. I stood in the doorway watching. She hadn't noticed me yet, too focused on getting the perfect angle. The Evelyn I knew would have been mortified to be caught like this, but this Evelyn, this stranger wearing my girlfriend's face, just kept posing, kept following Emma's instructions through the phone. How many strangers need to see you in your underwear before you feel validated? The words came out before I could stop them. Evelyn jumped, nearly dropping her phone. Frank, I thought you were at work. She scrambled to wrap herself in a robe, as if modesty suddenly mattered. How long have you been standing there? Long enough. I picked up her phone from the bed, scrolling through her recent posts. Jesus, Evelyn, there are comments here from guys describing exactly what they want to do to you, and you're liking them, responding with winky faces. It's just social media, she snapped, snatching her phone back. It's not real life. Why are you making such a big deal about this? Not real life? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Those are real men, writing real things about my girlfriend, who's really encouraging them. How is that not real life? You're being controlling, she said, but I caught the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Emma and Carol, I cut her off. The same Emma who cheats on every boyfriend she's ever had? The same Carol who gives her number to bartenders while her fiancé is in a bathroom? Those are your role models now? Don't talk about my friends like that, her voice rose. They support me, they encourage me to be confident, to express myself, unlike you, who just wants to keep me in a box. But box? I ran my hands through my hair, frustration building. Is that what you call having basic boundaries in a relationship? Being in a box? Through the phone speaker, I could hear Emma tell him he's being toxic. P, don't let him manipulate you. I reached over and ended the call. Can we have one conversation without your friend's commentary? See, this is exactly what they warned me about, Evelyn paced the room. You're trying to isolate me from my friends, control what I post, who I talk to. I don't want to control you, Evelyn, I said, my voice cracked. I want to recognize you. The woman I fell in love with didn't need likes from strangers to feel worthy. She didn't post thirst traps for validation. She knew her value came from who she was, not how many men wanted to sleep with her. Maybe you never really knew me, she said quietly. Maybe this is who I always was, and you just wanted to see something different. I looked around our bedroom, at the ring box hidden in my sock drawer, at the photos of us on the walls, at the life we'd been building. Maybe you're right. Maybe I don't know you anymore. But Evelyn, do you even know yourself? She didn't answer, just picked up her phone and started scrolling through her notifications, as if the conversation was already over, as if I wasn't even there. I walked out of the room, out of the apartment, out into the afternoon sun. Behind me, I heard the familiar sound of a camera shutter, another post, another pose, another piece of our relationship sacrificed for likes and comments from strangers who would never know the real her, the her I was losing, one post at a time. 6 months. That's how long it's been since Frank walked out of our apartment. I still catch myself reaching for the phone to text him whenever something funny happens at work, before remembering he's not there anymore. His contact is still in my favorites, I can't bring myself to delete it. My phone buzzes constantly now, another like, another comment, another DM from a stranger telling me how sexy I am. 10,000 followers. That's what I traded my relationship for, 10,000 nameless, faceless people who only know me through filters and carefully angled shots. You're living your best life, Carol declared last week at brunch, as I posted yet another photo, this time of me in a barely there bikini, pouting at the camera. The likes started rolling in immediately, each notification gave me that familiar rush, but the high feels shorter now, like a drug that's losing its potency. I dated a few guys after Frank, well, dated might be too strong a word. They'd slide into my DMs, complimenting my photos, suggesting drinks. They all follow the same pattern, full of charm and promises until they got what they wanted, then ghosting or keeping me around as a casual hookup. None of them asked about my dreams, my fears, my bad days at work. None of them looked at me the way Frank did. That's because Frank was boring, Emma insisted when I made the mistake of mentioning him. Look at your life now, you're free, you're hot, you're getting all this attention. But attention isn't the same as connection. I realized that last night, scrolling through hundreds of comments calling me beautiful, sexy, stunning, not one person asked how I was doing. I still post every day, multiple times actually. It's become a reflex, wake up, take morning selfie, check likes, respond to comments, plan next post. My life has become a carefully curated feast of moments designed to make others envious. But the irony is, I'm the envious one now. I envy couples holding hands in coffee shops. I envy the way Frank's new girlfriend looks at him in the photos my friend spotted on Instagram. Yes, I made her check since he blocked me months ago. I even envy my past self, the Evelyn who thought love was more important than likes. Remember when you used to want to write children's books? My sister asked me recently. I'd almost forgotten about that dream. Now, my creativity is limited to crafting clever captions and finding new poses that will get more engagement. The worst part? I know this isn't making me happy. I know every post, every provocative photo, every flirty response to a stranger's comment is just pushing me further from the life I actually want. But I can't stop. The thought of losing my followers, of becoming invisible again, terrifies me more than the emptiness I feel every night when I'm alone with my thoughts. Sometimes, I go back and look at old photos of Frank and me. There's one I can't stop staring at, us at a picnic, both laughing at something I can't remember now. My hair's a mess, I'm wearing no makeup, and I'm half turned away from the camera. It got exactly 1 like when I posted it years ago, but God, I looked happy, really, genuinely happy. Carol's getting married next month. She asked me to be a bridesmaid, even though we all know her relationship with Mike is hanging by a thread. He found out about the bartender and several others, but they're going ahead with the wedding anyway because she already has 10,000 followers invested in her wedding content. Is this what we've become? Trading real connections for digital validation, sacrificing love for likes? Last night, my finger hovered over the delete account button for a full minute. I couldn't do it, not yet. But for the first time since this all began, I'm starting to think about who I am without the filters, without the followers, without the constant performance. I just wish I'd figured it out before I lost the one person who saw me clearly, even when I couldn't see myself. Thank you for listening. Until the end, see you in the next episode of Revenge Story Times. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Goodbye.